Sorry, I probably should have turned that on. This webinar is scheduled for 1 hour, but we have extended an optional extra time frame of about a half hour for additional discussion with our expert guest speaker, Ingrid Johnson. Please remember to complete the evaluation after the webinar is complete to be able to receive your certificate. So I'm going to share my screen now. Oops. Okay. So again, thank you all for being here. Today we are going to discuss, I apologize, the basics of human trafficking for healthcare professionals. This webinar will be provided by myself, Debbie Rasica, as well as Roseanne Cervelli and Ingrid Johnson. So why are we putting on this presentation? We feel it's really, really important. Human trafficking can happen to anyone, no matter what race, age, or gender they may be. Recent studies have shown that over 80% of survivors who sought medical care while being trafficked were not identified. And as physicians, nurses, EMTs, social workers, dentists, counselors, all healthcare professionals, we are in the trenches and in a great position to help identify victims of violence. And we can do so effectively if we are trained and we are aware of the resources that are available. In today's webinar, we plan to define human trafficking, both labor and sex trafficking. We'll discuss factors that increase a person's vulnerability to being trafficked by a perpetrator. We'll provide healthcare professionals with trauma-informed information on how to respond to potential victims and/or survivors. We'll delve into the do's and don'ts for healthcare professionals when human trafficking is suspected. And lastly, we'll explore the vision of the future for healthcare systems and assessment of human trafficking needs. As we think about the term human trafficking, I would like all of you to take a second to rate your knowledge before the presentation begins. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your knowledge of human trafficking? Please keep that number in mind because we will refer to this same reflection at the end of the presentation. Now I'd like for everyone to think of some words or feelings that come to mind when you hear or see the words human trafficking. Please feel free to put them in the chat or just think to yourself what some of those words are that come to mind. This represents the thinking of words and thoughts that come to mind when people in healthcare think about human trafficking. They all are relevant, but there are two I would like to point out as terms we prefer not to be used when discussing human trafficking. The first is slavery. We often hear the term modern slavery being used to describe human trafficking. People who are victimized by traffickers do not like this term. It can be very stigmatizing, it can be re-traumatizing, it's exploitive. So it is a term that we would prefer not to use when talking about human trafficking. The other term I want to point out is smuggling. We would like to dispel the myth that smuggling is part of human trafficking, because indeed it's not. And we will go into that further on in the presentation. Next, I'd like to share a poem with you that I feel really depicts a personal experience. We can talk lots of data, but what are people experiencing who are actually going through this trauma? Now, we do need to understand everybody's experience is completely different. No two people, share the same experience and have the same traumatic results. But here's a poem called She Sold My Soul by Rochelle Limbeck, which I'd like to read for you now. He sold my soul for $100, sent me inside while he sits in the truck. Walk up to the door and knock, feel scared and ashamed, can't make it stop. Humiliated, I wish I was a pet. At least then maybe I'd be treated with a little bit more respect. The door opens, I feel sick. I really don't want to turn this trick, but my pimp is watching nearby, so I put on a pretty smile for the guy, the ultimate lie. Shut your emotions down. No one wants to see you cry. Take your clothes off. Do what needs to be done. While thinking about what he'll do with the money, maybe take me somewhere fun. Counting dollars in your head, one at a time. Maybe my pimp might buy me a line. I need some drugs to take this memory away. Hopefully, it will kill me today. He sold my soul for $100, but he says he loves me, that I'm lucky, that not many men could stand a girl with edges so rough. The job is done. I walk back outside. He slams his door shut. I limp to the car. Wish I could scrub off the scars. Nobody cares that you're dying inside. Not one single person ever bothers to ask why. This is a good description of feeling invisible, and I think it really reemphasizes the importance of healthcare professionals becoming educated on this topic, as well as what resources are available. Very moving poem. Okay, so what is human trafficking? Well, human trafficking is done through sexual labor, and this issue affects everyone across the world. It's a true detriment to the safety and health of our society and the very dignity of our nation. So what is human trafficking? Human trafficking uses force, fraud, or coercion, which will be described in detail later on by Roseanne. And these tactics are used to get another person to provide exploitive labor or commercial sex acts. Worldwide, there are more situations of labor trafficking than sex trafficking, but here in the US, we do have a greater awareness of sex trafficking. Often labor trafficking is not considered, but it is important to learn as much as you can about both sex and labor trafficking. There are situations where they can happen at the same time. There are gray areas and a lot of lines can get crossed. But a big takeaway is that human trafficking is really profitable. It's actually more profitable than the trafficking of drugs or guns. Drugs and guns need to be rebought when supplies are used up. Humans can be sold again and again and again, many, many times within one day or one evening. Lots of money is being made this way. And why are we particularly concerned in New Jersey? Although it's difficult to gather statistics because many different agencies report, and this is certainly something that is underreported, but we do know that New Jersey rates very high nationally for reported cases of human trafficking. There are reasons for this. We're right on the 95 corridor, which is our main route for trafficking drugs, guns, and human beings. Very easy access with all our seaports, airports, roads, and trains. We are the most densely populated state. We have close proximity to other major cities. we are a big tourist destination with places like Atlantic City, Jersey Shore, all our sporting events, and other large-scale events. Big gatherings increase demand for people who are being trafficked. And this is where we can play a big role by helping with our prevention efforts and our community supports to help decrease the demand and hopefully prevent human trafficking. In New Jersey, we do have many industries that are engaged in labor trafficking. This is just a very short list. Construction, agriculture. Think of all the farming we have here in New Jersey, all of our factories and warehouses, all the hospitality and restaurants, people involved with domestic work, working in nail salons, sewing shops. And we can't forget about professional jobs as well. Recently, we were told a personal story by a person who was victimized by labor trafficking, and it was done through IT recruitment. And the job he signed up for was not the job he ended up doing. And it did take him a long time to be able to leave that life and gain back his freedom. Anybody can be trafficked. Nobody is immune to being trafficked. But here's just a graph that just highlights a basic percentage of people who are trafficked. The majority are adult women, coming in over 50%. Next are adult men, coming in a little over 20%. And then we have little girls coming in at 20%, and little boys coming in at 8%. Again, this is from a national data source. These numbers change all the time. And again, we do know cases are underreported, but this in itself are too many people who are being traumatized in such a toxic and chronic way. Although anybody can be trafficked, there are people who have additional vulnerabilities that traffickers are very skilled at honing in on and beginning their process to recruit them into trafficking. We all have basic core needs. We all strive for self-actualization, healthy self-esteem, love and belonging. We crave safety and security. It's so necessary for us. And we have basic physiological needs that need to be tended to before we're able to function in any other capacity. When our core needs are not being met, we suffer from core wounds that run deep, and these can be very painful. All of the things listed on this slide. And again, perpetrators are really skilled at honing in on folks who may be dealing with such painful core wounds from their basic needs not being met. In addition, there are other vulnerable populations, including runaways, children who are homeless or in foster care, people challenged with hunger, housing, financial concerns, people who have experienced physical and sexual abuse already in their lives, people who are not US citizens, people who are involved in the juvenile or criminal justice system, either as victims or as perpetrators, folks who struggle with substance use concerns, folks with disabilities, whether visible or invisible. And we also need to include our LGBTQ plus communities as well. Anybody with extra challenges becomes more vulnerable to our perpetrators. So How do traffickers operate? How do they get their job done? To explain this further, I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Roseanne Cervelli. And welcome, Roseanne, and thank you for your expertise today.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'd like everybody to take a deep breath as we continue on with this presentation. Sometimes some of these things are hard to hear. You may know somebody who has had this experience and so on, and want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and your thoughts as we go along with this presentation. So how do our traffickers operate? Well, the most pervasive myth about human trafficking is that it involves, big white vans, kidnapping kids off the streets and things like that, use of physical force. And even though that does sometimes happen, that is not the full reality of how human trafficking happens. In reality, traffickers use very subtle psychological means to get their victims. They trick them, they use fraud, manipulation, threats to get their victims to perform commercial sex acts or exploitive behavior. So here's a little bit of how it happens. It's deep, it's complicated, and very difficult perhaps for us to understand if we're standing outside of the situation. But when you're inside of the situation, it's a completely different story. So to begin with luring, where the trafficker wants to establish a connection, either in person or online, with the real intent, a very conscious intent of wanting to exploit this person. Since COVID, the online trafficking has really, really grown. And so it's something that we really want to be attentive to as our teens and so on are very, very susceptible when they're online or they're gaming and things like that, where they can, be susceptible to the voice or the words of a trafficker without their knowing. So there's the luring part. And then we go to grooming. And here the person gets to know their victim a little bit more, tries to help fulfill their needs and their dreams, trying to fulfill, like what Debbie talked about, the basic human needs of a person, especially, like we said, of those who are very vulnerable. Here comes along somebody who's caring for me, who wants to take care of me, who says I'm wonderful, who maybe even showers me with gifts. And so finally, some of those core needs are being met. And with that comes the next stage, the stage of isolation, where the victim just wants to be with their person more and more. And as they tend to be with that person, they lose connection with their other environmental people, with their family, with their friends, their social connections, and so on. And they start to allow their world to become the world with that person. And once that is that isolation, once there is that sense of separation, then the trafficker can really get into his or her manipulation and coercion, sending false messages to them, sending messages like, I love you very much, but you have to take care of this situation if you want me to believe you love me, and so on. So the person is feeling a little bit of the crazy making, but at the same time, very afraid to leave the situation and feeling very powerless as to their choices. And that, of course, leads to their exploitation, ensuring ongoing participation while the perpetrator runs their life, takes away their earnings, and so on, and creates this sense of entrapment for which the person is very, very difficult to find their freedom. Okay, and the next slide. This information comes from the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking, which is a wonderful, wonderful organization. The website is right there, safenj.org. If you're looking for any information, you will find it there. And these are the red flags that they've identified for us to look out for. The person is reluctant to speak, very quiet, or maybe looks to the other person when they are asked a question. They look to their perpetrator before they answer. They're exhausted. They're dominated or controlled. They're fearful. They work long, long hours. They are alienated from family and friends. They receive gifts. All of a sudden somebody has a computer or an iPhone, or somebody has other gifts that are just not in their ordinary realm of their life. And where did that come from? And then also signs of abuse, which we'll talk about a little bit more. Okay, our next slide. So what are some of the signs of the trafficking? Well, their documents are usually confiscated. They usually don't have driver's license or any of their papers because those are in the hands of the perpetrator. They are coached on what to say if they are confronted with a healthcare professional or law enforcement. They are threatened with deportation, calling ICE on them, so that they would feel as if they are going to have to leave everything that they do know right now. They are recruited for jobs, but forced to engage in other kinds of activities, other kinds of work. Their salaries are often garnished to pay off debts. Suddenly, it's you owe me for the food you had last night, or you owe me for the bed that you slept in last night, or maybe even for the floor you slept on last night, right? Long work hours. And the other really big factor is the threats. They threaten their families with harm. If the trafficked individual attempts to report to anybody, to escape, they are deprived often of food, water, sleep, medical care, the protective gear to work safely. And also another sign to look for if a person comes your way that are wearing inappropriately clothing, their sexual clothing, or inappropriate clothing for the weather. These are just little, red signs to look out for as you assess the person before you. Other signs, well, if you do get a chance to talk to them alone, which is so recommended, but if you do get that chance, you can perhaps in a very gentle and compassionate way begin to ask them questions, not probing, but more like conversational, or more like these are questions we ask all of those that we are working with, and find out about their work or their living conditions. What is it like for them? Do they live alone? Do they have to pay a lot of rent? Do they work, and so on? And where do they work? Just very conversationally, and see how the person responds. You also want to assess for poor mental health or abnormal behavior. If the person is fearful, depressed, paranoid, tense, avoiding eye contact. If the person feels unaware of their location, they may not even know where they are. They may be in a different city or a different part of town that they've never been to before, and they may appear confused. A lost sense of time, especially when they're up all hours, sleeping maybe during the day, trying to catch a bit of food or a bit of rest here or there, losing the sense of time and where they are. And also perhaps inconsistencies in their story. When you ask questions, they may have information that contradicts what they just said before. You want to also take notice of their health conditions, their physical appearances, and so on. They may lack health or dental care. They may look malnourished, signs of physical or sexual abuse, as well as branding and tattoos, which many perpetrators do for their victims so that they can claim them almost as their property, just like a permanent scar on a person for this, terrible, activities that are happening to them. And then a sense of powerlessness. These are people who are not in charge of anything. They're not in charge of their life anymore. They're not in charge of finances. They don't have any documentation. They can't speak for themselves or make decisions. So there is an aura of fear and aloneness and isolation and invisibility around them. So with all of that, we might ask, well, why don't they just leave? Why don't they just go away and run away or call the police or things like that? And trust me, it is much harder than we would ever believe for them to do so. There is tremendous fear for themselves, like we said, and their loved ones. There's an emotional bond that gets formed where the victim may actually believe that this person who is their trafficker is also their caregiver, and that this person will love them and take care of them, and things will be different, and so on. They convince themselves, or they are kind of convinced by their trafficker, that loyalty is owed. Look what I'm doing for you. I took you away from your home situation where you were being, abused by your mom or your dad or something. So they declare themselves their protector of the victim. And actually, of course, they're the ones that are hurting them even more. They don't leave because of just basic survival needs. Where are they going to go? Where can they go if they have absolutely nothing? So they are there for their food, clothing, and shelter. They are food and sleep deprived. They are exhausted. They are traumatized, fragmented. Their wills and their spirit may just be broken as they just live one day to the next and the next and the next. And the same keeps happening over and over again. Also, they may not leave because of the forced drug taking. It is often the case where a perpetrator will supply their victim with drugs, which at times the victim may accept to just alleviate themselves from the pain they're having. And then I mean that both physical and emotional pain as well. And a person actually can become addicted. And so the trafficker also becomes their drug dealer. And so there is even more reason for them to stay. This bullet, the first one, may sound very strange. They are often unaware that they are being trafficked. And you and I might ask ourselves the question, well, how can that be? How could they not know what's happening to them? And all we can say is that this is how trauma works. The situation begins to almost feel normal and acceptable, even though it's not acceptable, of course. But day after day after day, the same thing. And so they're not even aware of what is really happening. Also, there are times when there are several people who are being trafficked living together in the same place. So other people are having the same experiences. And so that also kind of normalizes the situation and helps them to survive, right? So the trauma bond is formed. They can't run away. And so they become numb, they freeze, and they just allow themselves to kind of go on one day after the next, trying just to survive. They have a sense of shame and humiliation if they were ever to return home. Often the trafficker will convince them that your family's not going to accept you after they know what you've been doing. Do you think they're going to want you back in their house, and so on? So the shaming continues. They are convinced they have nowhere to go, that they can't go back home. They also are afraid of arrest and jail time, not only because the trafficker tells them that they could be arrested for the things that they have been doing, but also they are afraid that if I go to jail, my trafficker is going to abandon me, and then I have nobody. What is going to happen to me? So that is another reason why they don't leave. There's also, again, as we talked about, the fear of deportation. They have a fear of losing their children as well if something happens to them. So how can we help the victim survivors of human trafficking? This is a very short list of what we can do and of what we should not do. All right, so what we can do: educate yourself and become trauma informed about human trafficking. There's a lot of information out there. There are a lot of different advocacy groups and websites and so on, both nationally and internationally, that you can read up on and learn as much as you can about this situation. Listen compassionately without any judgment. If the victim is under 18, DCPMP will need to be contacted, and you need to know your hospital office policies about who to report your suspicions to your managers or supervisors and so on. Any person who is under 18 is not a criminal, even if they are engaging in commercial sex. If they are under the age of 18, it is considered child abuse. And so they need to be protected and helped and given proper resources and so on to help them on a road to recovery. Become mindful of any of your own unconscious biases just due to lack of understanding of what is happening or your unfamiliarity with this topic. So become mindful of yourself and your own feelings and your own reactions when you're with them, not to feel shocked, not to, engage in facial expressions that show such shock or disapproval and so on. There's a lot of things to become conscious of in our own body language and so on. Join a coalition or an advocacy group to learn more and be part of more in terms of making a difference. And also in terms of the protection for those involved in labor trafficking, use fair trade products. Look for the little signal there that says fair trade. You can go to justicenetwork.org and learn a whole lot more about that. Items like cars and computers, coffee, chocolate, often are not fair traded. They often involve child labor and labor trafficking of adults as well. So to not support those particular items and companies. And what we should not do. We have to know that it is not our job to fix or rescue anyone. We should never just say to the patient, oh, why don't you just leave? Because just leaving could actually cause more harm than good. We don't know what their perpetrator might do to them or to their families or make good on any of their threats and so on. So a plan really needs to be in place and so on. There needs to be resources given to the patient so that they will be safe when and if they are able to leave. Do not ask probing questions when it's very clear that the victim is afraid and agitated and does not want to answer at that time. You can always say, we can meet again. We can talk another time if you like. Just keep that open door, an open invitation. Do not show judgment or bias. Do not make assumptions about the person or ignore or minimize the situation. And also, as strange as this might sound, not to call law enforcement, not to call 911 right away, unless a person is in extreme danger, immediate danger. Then, of course, you would have to get immediate help. But it is advised by coalitions and those that are in the know for human trafficking to call the National Human Trafficking Hotline instead. They will give you lots of information and guidance as to what to do next. We started this presentation with a poem that was fairly hopeless. I'd like to read this poem that shows the hope of a recovery. This is called She Lives by Deborah Ayers.
Okay, Roseanne, sorry. We just do have to be mindful of time.
Yes.
We're starting to run a little long.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Just read this. She'd forgotten how to smile. She looked into the mirror, urging her muscles to remember the pattern. Her fingers edged her cheeks upward, tracing the outline of what she sought. She clawed into the depths of her soul, into the darkness that plagued her. She searched for a marble, a sparkle of joy and light. They had put her down, stripped her of her purity, chartered her like an object, sold her to the highest bidder, identity lost in more ways than one. She'd survived, she'd escaped, she rebuilt a new identity, a brave voice, fighting for the voiceless, protecting the innocent, past the hate, anger, and nightmares, building on precious lost years, healing from within, telling the world her story, learning about love and happiness, walking out in freedom, embracing life as the sun rises at dawn, like a dead seed sprouting to life. She is gradually moving past her horror learning to find her smile again. Okay, and here is the human trafficking number. You can put this in your phone. That would be good. Okay. 888-378-8888. And we'd like to show you a film now that shows what a hospital or medical setting can do to help a person who may be involved in human trafficking. And then we'll turn it over to Ingrid, who's involved in this very work.
Thank you so much, Roseanne.
How to spot a victim of human trafficking. A trafficker can be male or female. Recruiters, working for the trafficker, are often victims too. They can present as family, employers, neighbors, or companions. They should never serve as language translators. A controlling partner may indicate human trafficking. Proceed with care in the safest way possible for both patient and staff. Have a protocol that ensures these situations are handled in a consistent and direct manner.
I'm sorry. It's our policy to initially evaluate patients individually. I can call you back in a few minutes. Lily?
Recent studies have shown that over 80% of survivors sought medical care while being trafficked, but they were not identified. Physicians, nurses, EMTs, social workers, dentists, all healthcare professionals are in a key position to identify victims of violence if they have the proper training and resources.
Oh, I fell. I can be clumsy. Ow.
Let me go get the doctor. Are you okay with that? As I mentioned before, it's our policy to examine the patients first. We let visitors back in when it's in the best interest of the patient. Your friend Angel's asking to join us back here. Is that what you want?
Red flags of human trafficking can include signs of physical violence, no ID, fear of a controlling companion, hesitancy to speak, poor eye contact, or a complaint not matching presentation. Whenever possible, provide suspected victims a safe and private space so that sensitive conversations can take place.
Hi, Lily. I'm Dr. Verghese. Is it okay if I take a closer look at your belly? So notice significant bruising on your face. How did that happen?
Oh, these are my fault. I didn't follow the rules.
We encourage you to familiarize yourself with the PAIR tool, a guide for healthcare professionals on how to provide trauma-informed assistance for patients who are at high risk of abuse, neglect, or violence. The PAIR tool ensures that the patient's wishes, safety, and well-being are prioritized.
Your stomach should be feeling better soon. Just a superficial bruise, no internal injury.
Lily, this is Nicole. She works as an advocate. She'd like to talk to you just to make sure you're safe. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I guess so.
Hi, Lily. I know you're here for an injury, but I like to talk to every patient just to make sure that they're safe at home. We want to make sure that we can help you. Is that all right?
The advocate has lived experience and is trained in a trauma-informed approach and process. After reviewing information about abuse, neglect, or violence, time is allowed for open discussion, especially if the patient is exhibiting risk factors of victimization. If assistance is declined, the patient's wishes are always respected.
I'm safe. I'm a model and my boyfriend is my manager.
Does your boyfriend keep your ID safe?
Yes, and he keeps most of my money too, so I don't waste it. Do you know what's wrong with me?
If the victim agrees, the advocate will make connections with resources such as temporary housing, mental health services, or health insurance applications. Remember, as healthcare providers, we are not here to rescue patients. Even if they decline help at first contact, let the victim know that your facility is a safe place to come back to.
Lily, I can help you get connected to a safe house program if you want to get out of the situation that you're in. Are you interested in calling there?
How is that safe?
It's totally up to you, but you deserve a life that's safe from violence. I can help you with that if you want.
I would like that.
Here's a Dignity backpack. It has toiletries, clothing, anything that you need.
Empowerment, voice, and choice. Gaining the patient's permission empowers them and follows HIPAA regulations. The relevant paperwork can be completed now that the patient has consented.
Here's your ride. If you ever need to, you can always check out our Safe Haven Clinic. The staff is specifically trained to treat patients who have experienced trauma similar to yours. But don't worry, it's free and confidential.
Okay. I hope everyone feels a little more enlightened after seeing that video. The PAIR tool mentioned is one of many screening tools that are available. And this one particularly addresses P for providing privacy, E for education, A for asking the questions, and the two R's are for respect and respond. And I think that was all demonstrated very well in the video. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Ingrid Johnson, our guest expert speaker today. Ingrid Johnson is a nationally recognized expert, registered nurse, and speaker in the field of human trafficking. Her passion for the field comes from her own experience as she is the mother of a human trafficking survivor. In 2004, her 13-year-old daughter, oldest of 3 children, was missing for 11 months. Ingrid worked closely with law enforcement to help rescue her from across state lines in New York. Having served on the board of several community organizations, Ingrid collaborates with community partners to advocate for vulnerable populations, including victims and survivors of human trafficking, as well as their families. So with that, I welcome you, Ingrid, and please take the stage.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to work with Roseanne and Debbie and to present to all of you today. I'm going to share a few bits of information, but I'll start with the word that resonates from the beginning of this presentation, and that's hope. What I've spent the rest of my career doing after the family incident is inspiring folks and hopefully providing them with hope for a better day and a better tomorrow. I also like to refer back in our conversations as we continue to move forward to some of the information on the previous slides when we talk about people whose core needs are not being met. That's so key, right? We could experience that ourselves. And so we just want to connect you that it's not a them conversation. This is a them and a us conversation. Another point I like to go back to is about vulnerable populations, but we're also talking about vulnerable people. We're acknowledging our own vulnerabilities, right? And, we gravitate in and out of vulnerable states, so just connecting you further to why we are here today and what does this have to do with us, our communities that we serve, and our organizations. So, wanted to get that out the way, Debbie, to bring it forward. So a bit of my story, as was cited here, goes back to 2004, and I'm going to take you forward to how something so traumatic can happen and change my life, but how it's now changing the organization that I work for and represent, Atlantic Health Systems Overlook Medical Center. So I've been here with the organization for a little over 20 years. I started after having this brush with human trafficking. I actually started with the organization, left and came back. I came back as an RN in leadership position, thinking that I had left this work in the community outside the door and was just continuing with my life and that of my family. And so I got my daughter back, did what moms do, but I think nursing was the saving grace that I had been trained and highly experienced in different aspects of nursing, including behavioral health. I had been a critical care nurse at the time, and I had worked in an emergency room. And so, I don't serve as a replacement to the voice of the survivor or my daughter's voice. I actually have her permission to carry our story forward. And I think it's important to mention that there are survivors who are out here speaking as well. But I am speaking as the mother of a survivor. I served as counselor, I served as guardian, I served as a lot of things. But advocacy is what we talked about in our presentation earlier today. And everyone needs an advocate. You do pretty good on your own until something traumatic happens, then you fall apart. That's part of life. So we all need to be partnered with friends or family or someone to be an advocate. So Atlantic Health decided to take this on and shared my story with senior leaders. We started a pilot human trafficking committee in 2020. We got through COVID, plowed ahead, didn't stop. We have a policy here at Atlantic. We reviewed our other policies for domestic violence and suspected child abuse and neglect. And then we coupled the human trafficking policy in our review. We also placed banners in our emergency departments, only in the Overlook site under Atlantic. We have 5 hospitals on a partnership with Central State. Our hospitals are Hackettstown, Newton, we're located in Chilton, and Morristown. And so we have in our Overlook campus sites these banners that transitioned into posters so that our patients would know that we are here for them, hoping that they can trust us. Our committee members are through the multidisciplinary team for multiple campuses throughout Overlook, and we convene monthly. Our sensitivity has risen to not only think about the them, but to think about the us and the team members that could possibly be involved or people they know who could be possibly be involved in human trafficking, along with our patients and our visitors. So I think it's important to mention this is not just about the patient in front of us. This is about everyone who's connected to the patient or for future patients. And so I want to implore you to prepare for developing this trusting, hopefully long lasting relationship that will expand past the person in front of you. And that your patients, your adult patients that we refer to, they may have to come back before they open their arms to receive the help that you're able to provide them or to listen to you more clearly about the resources that you may can connect them to. So be patient. Patience is a virtue and it's required. What the work we're doing at Atlantic Health, again, is for the clinical and the non-clinical team member. And that's key. Don't overlook people of all capacities within your organization and their role when you're looking at what can you do or what can your organization do in the fight against human trafficking. I also think it's important to not forget about safety, safety for all, safety for the patient, the potential victim or survivors. And we talked a little bit about security earlier, that this is not driven by law enforcement. And I love the fact that that was included in the presentation. But when we need law enforcement, we can make those decisions in alignment with our organization's policies and procedures, or when we need to involve security. At my organization, they would be the ones to involve external law enforcement, not the team members. And so it is key that you not step out of this presentation today, not considering your organization's policies and procedures. And escalation is important. You know, if it's not written, do what we know to do, which is escalate to the next highest person within your department, your leadership team, and then work collaboratively to figure out what the next steps would be. Um, and so all of that is important, and as your organization determine their role in the fight against human trafficking. So let's talk about some next steps, where we are here in Atlantic and where I am in my personal life. Again, I serve many capacities besides mom, as you can imagine, for my family. My daughter is now 33 years old. She is a professional teaching. She has two lovely children who had nothing to do with human trafficking. And so I've now seen this conversation go to the next level in my life, where I'm looking out for my grandkids and other people's grandchildren. What are we leaving as a legacy for the future in the fight against human trafficking? And so I love slides about Maslow's hierarchy and all that's tied to it. It's been a passion of mine for years. I just love the lingo and what it implies about this hierarchy of needs that need to be met, and where we start at a foundation of just breathing and living, eating, and then you grow to self-actualization. You know, no one wants to live and stay in the gutter forever. People have dreams, and sometimes our dreams are deferred. Sometimes we do lose hope. But I believe in us as healthcare providers and organizations that we are good at, we are expert at inspiring others to continue to dream dreams, to get on the horse again, to not give up. And partnership is what we know. And so today is a great example of all of those things. The safeinNewJersey.org for the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking is important. You can Google that on your own to find lots of information, to revisit some of the videos that are available. I also encourage you to have roundtable discussions within your organization. Employ debriefing techniques. I don't think we talk enough about debriefing these days. In my younger years in healthcare, we talked about it a lot, but debriefing is a powerful tool. People want to be heard, they want to be able to express their emotion. And again, look at your policies. And I'm going to wrap up and talk about why you. So, why you? Why are you not just asked to listen to this presentation, but join in this fight against human trafficking? It's because you are some of the most powerful people in our community. So why not you? You have a skill set like none other. Collectively, you're strong, and you can collectively go to a higher power to figure out how we solve problems. We don't think we know how to solve problems just because we're in healthcare, but we definitely have the resources to bring things together, to bring people together. And so as I bring my part of this presentation to a close, I want to thank you again for being here today. I thought this was a wonderful event with a great turnout. And I hope that collectively, Debbie, Roseanne, and myself have inspired you to make a difference wherever you sit, whatever your title within your organization, and within the communities that you touch. Thank you.
Oh, Ingrid, phenomenal. I could listen to you all day long. Your knowledge is just so profound. I am now going to reshare the slide. I'd like for people to reflect again on their knowledge on a scale of 1 to 10, and what thoughts and feelings come to mind now after the presentation. This slide contains the video that we showed, as well as a labor trafficking and sex trafficking PSA. These are all available on the SaferNJ.org website. Please take the time to complete the evaluation, either through the link or the QR code. This will only be up and available till Friday at 5 o'clock. So it's important to get this in so you can have your certificate of completion. We will be staying on a little bit for those who would like to be able to talk further with Ingrid. So feel free to do that, but make sure that you do complete the evaluation. I do thank everybody for your time today. Time is so precious. It's truly an honor to have such a great turnout, as Ingrid mentioned. We are about compassion and serving to help people help themselves. Empowerment kept coming through today, partnership, collaboration, community. We have resources. New Jersey actually does a wonderful job in offering resources to folks who may be victimized by human trafficking. And the more we know, the more we educate and advocate, the more we can assist those who are willing to accept some help. So if anyone has questions, comments, I'll check the chat right now. And again, feel free to sign off if you need to once you complete the evaluation, but we will stay on longer if anybody would like to discuss anything further. Just a few beautiful comments coming in. It was wonderful, really rang some bells. Yes, we will put the survey link in the chat, and we can repost the websites as well. In addition, Roseanne and I are more than happy to share the PowerPoint presentation with anybody who is interested. So please feel free to contact either of us if you care to have a copy.
So I'd like to add, Debbie, that if anybody wants us to do this presentation for their organization or group or whoever, we're here for you. So all is welcome.
Good point. Oh, and okay, I am trying to copy the links to put in the chat. See if it works. It's not allowing me to. We certainly will make sure we get out the links for the videos and the evaluation link in chat. I can put that screen back up to give folks more time to do that. Oops, sorry. And while this is up, again, please, I will again check some of the comments and questions here. Okay, folks are having trouble connecting for their CEU. We will take care of that. But it does not look like there are any questions, just request for the link and the PowerPoint. And some beautiful comments. Thanks for the great presentation. As a clinician at Central State, I'd love to work with you ladies. And lots of thank yous. Okay, I'll leave this up another moment. And then we will close the webinar for today. And at this point, I will stop recording. Oops. Okay, thank you very much. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Well, thank you. And ladies, you did a phenomenal job. So thank you for allowing me to partner with you anytime.
Oh, you're the best, Ingrid. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. You too.
Thank you so much, Ingrid.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. Is there anything that you feel we